Hey there everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is of course Daki, and thank you for coming and clicking on that video. Thank you for coming and watching these videos. Thank you for spending your time with me watching these videos. So as you probably already know and have read in the title or the description, this video is about the Covenant abilities in World of Warcraft Shadowlands. So basically this is not a massive deep dive into the Covenant abilities. This is just taking a few points that I have noticed appear quite frequently across the internet and exploring it a little bit and giving you my feedback on these a couple of topics basically. So this is not a deep dive, and I will also include the precursor here that I have not played the alpha, I'm not in the beta, so I'm just relying on all the information out there from Wowhead, from Icy Veins, and from a lot of other intelligent people to sort of guide my perception on this. So realistically, this is my opinion on it, and your opinions may change, and I'd like to hear from you guys. If you do have a different opinion or a different outlook on these Covenant abilities, leave a comment in the comment section down below, or join my Discord and leave a comment in the Discord, but let me know. But anyway guys, with all that said and done, let's get into the video and we'll have a look at a couple of topics and explore what is going on with these Covenant abilities. So before we start, what is the Covenants and what are their abilities? So basically, if this is the first video you're watching in regards to the Covenant abilities, or what is a Covenant essentially, let's have a quick, say 20-second look at what a Covenant ability is, or a Covenant for that matter. So with a Covenant, when you join Shadowlands, you go through, you do your storyline, you get to choose from 4 Covenants. Those Covenants are similar to the Night Fae, the Necrolords, the Kyrian, and of course the Venthia. And once you choose one of these Covenants to pursue, basically you get a signature Covenant ability, and that signature Covenant ability is the Covenant ability. So in the case of the Night Fae, you get to turn into a Vulpin, and you get to traverse the land, sorry. So basically, it is the signature Covenant ability. Now, with that, you also get a class ability. So essentially, one ability, or slightly multiple abilities, depending on your class. So with the Death Knight, you'll get a particular ability. With the Mages, you'll get a particular ability. You get the idea here. Now, it is not spec-based. It is class-based. And this leads us into the segue of the first topic we're going to be talking about, which is it good for one? Is it good for all, basically? So what this really means is, if I choose a hybrid class, such as a priest, such as a paladin, when I change between, say as a paladin, if I change between retribution and prot, with the ability given to me by my Covenant, is this ability going to be just as good for retribution as it is for prot? And if you want a deeper dive on this topic, go and watch Preach's video. I will try and get a link for that and leave it up on, leave it in the description. But long story short is if you change your spec while in your Covenant, is it only great for one spec and not so great for another spec? Now, when I was looking at this, I did come across a lot of information suggesting that yes, it seems like it's really good for one spec, or it's good for say 2 of the 3 specs, or 3 of the 4 specs if you're a druid, but not so really good for all of your specs. And classes similar to the warlocks, to your mages, to your rogues, seemingly have it a little bit easier, where they have abilities given to them that it doesn't matter what spec they choose, it sort of flows with all 3 specs. But a hybrid class similar to a priest, or your paladins as another example, you have it slightly harder. So I'm going to use a priest example here, and I'm going to take a priest that has, let's say, joined the Kyrian Covenant. When you join the Kyrian Covenant as a priest, you get an ability called Boon of the Ascended. So Boon of the Ascended does slightly different things depending on your spec, and this is where I'm still on the fence with this. So it essentially is the same ability. Boon of the Ascended, essentially as a shadow spec, will draw upon the power of the Ascended for 10 seconds, granting access to Ascended Nova, replaces Mind Flay with Ascended Blast, and increases your movement speed by 50%. Upon expiration, it releases an Ascended Eruption. So basically, it does a certain thing, right? So when you change spec to Discipline or Holy, you would expect to have a completely different ability, but you sort of don't. It, again, draws upon the power of the Ascended for 10 seconds, granting you access to Ascended Nova, replacing Smite with Ascended Blast and increasing your movement speed. So you see here that it does the same thing no matter what spec you're in. Now, in the case of the priest, if you were to join the Kyrian, it doesn't matter significantly, because as discipline, you'll be using smite to deal damage. As shadow, you'll be using mind flay, which obviously translates into ascended blast, to deal damage. However, as holy, you don't do as much damage in a raid environment or in a mythic plus environment, so realistically, Boon of the Ascended for a priest works really well with shadow, works really well with discipline. However, does not work as well with holy. It still works and it still is useful and it still can come in handy, but rather than, say, giving you say a healing spell as holy and a damaging spell for shadow and disc, it's sort of like the same ability. So let's have just a quick look at what the abilities do, because this might shed a little bit more light. Ascended Nova releases a powerful blast of enema, dealing a certain amount of spell power as arcane damage to all enemies, and a certain amount of healing up to 6 allies within the 8 yards. So it grants a stack of Boon of the Ascended for each target damaged. So basically, you can see that it does actually work for the 3 specs. It's just, it's more prevalent for, say, Shadow and Discipline than it is for Holy. So it still will help with Holy players. It will still definitely help with them, but it's not... If you played Shadow or if you played Discipline, technically it would be better for those 2 specs. So I kind of agree here. I kind of agree that some of these abilities will work extremely well in the case of the Paladins, which I haven't really, and I'm not going to go over in topic, I do apologize, might work extremely well for Holy, but may not work well for Prot. So yeah, this sort of topic has come up quite frequently over Reddit forums, over YouTube videos. It comes up a lot where it's great for one spec, not great for another. And looking over this, it does look like it does retain that sort of analogy. However, it's not as bad as what it would initially seem. So don't stress too much if you are a hybrid player. It's not... On the onset, it's not drastic, but it may sway you towards one or another covenant. Which now leads us into the second topic, which is, I guess you could call it the power of the covenants. Basically, one thing that people have consistently and reverberated across the internet is the min-maxing that is going to come with choosing a particular covenant. And realistically, I thought this was going to be bad. I thought that, no, I'm going to be locked into, let's say, the Kyrian, and oh no, I'm going to be a Death Knight Kyrian, and that's it, because it does 5% extra damage no matter what I do. There's no point in me changing my covenants. Sort of yes and sort of no. So for this example, and the way that I can really convey this to you guys, is I'm going to choose my class, my Death Knight, and I am an Unholy Death Knight, so I'm going to choose that as an example here. And I'm going to choose 2 covenants, and I'm going to compare the 2, and hopefully this sheds a little bit of light, because initially I thought this was bad, this was drastic. I know I'm going to be locked into a particular covenant because that deals the most damage, but the more I look at it, the more it's not that case, and realistically, all the covenants are a lot closer than I initially thought. So let's look at the Night Fae, let's look at the Necrolords. So with the Night Fae, if I was a Death Knight in the Night Fae covenant, I would get an ability called Death's Due. Now this replaces my Death and Decay, and essentially it works very, very, very much the same as Death and Decay with a slight twist here. So basically, it corrupts the targeted ground, causing a certain amount of attack power as shadow damage over 10 seconds to all targets in that area. Enemies deal 1% reduced damage to you up to a maximum of 15%, and their power is transferred to you as an equal amount as strength. So you can see here it sounds like it's Death and Decay but tweaked a little bit, and I kind of like the idea of this. I really do. When you place your Death and Decay down, essentially you can still multi-hit, you can still AoE with your Necrotic Strike, you can still AoE with your Heart Strike and Scourge Strikes, so it still works no matter if you're Blood, Frost, or Unholy in that regard. But where this changes a little bit is when you look at the Necrolord's Death Knight Covenant ability. So if I was a Death Knight in the Necrolord, I would get an ability called Abominational Limb. So this sprouts an additional limb for 12 seconds, dealing damage every 1 second for a certain amount of attack power as shadow damage to all nearby enemies, and if they are outside of 8 yards, it will pull them closer. So it's essentially another death grip, essentially. There's no easy way to say that, it's just another death grip. Here's the thing though, both of these abilities, as cool as they damn well sound, can be broken down into damage components, and they can also be broken down into utility components. Now let's go over that real quick, and this might help you understand why these two Covenant abilities are closer than you think, and they're not really too far apart. So let's look at the Night Fae Death Knight Covenant ability. Now, the damage component on this is very much the same as Death and Decay, where you deal a certain amount of damage over the duration of the Death's Due, which is the same as Death and Decay. Essentially, you just deal ticking damage while it's on the ground. Now, that's the damage component of it. Now, if you look at the damage component of the Necrolord, it deals damage every 1 second for 12 seconds as shadow damage of a percent of your attack power. So that's the damage component of the Necrolord Covenant ability. So you can see that the Death's Due and the Abominational Limb do have damage components essentially associated with them. Now, here's where we can't compare it too much further. We see the percent and the attack numbers here, we see how long they do a deal damage, and we can extrapolate some sort of damage associated with these two abilities. But we're not in the live game, and these are subject to change. So we really can't sit here and say Death's Due from the Night Fae is going to do 4% extra damage or 1% extra damage over the duration of a boss fight, as an example. We can't say that. And therefore we can't extrapolate which one damage-wise is going to be the best. And that, I think, is where a lot of people are getting caught up. They see these numbers that are put out by Blizzard, and they see that this is the locked-in numbers, this is where it's going to go down. That's not the case, and as we've seen in BFA with the corruption, Blizzard have a tendency to change the damage numbers and the raw output of a corruption in BFA, as you could expect with Infinite Stars, with TD, with your Void Eruption. All these sort of abilities basically have been subject to change throughout the course of a patch, or beta, if you really want to call it that. So essentially, these damage numbers are going to change, and even when they land in the live game, here's the thing, they're still going to change. Blizzard are going to look at this, and if all Death Knights are flocking to Night Fae because it does do 5, 7, 10% extra damage over a course of a fight, of course Blizzard are going to be changing that to bring them both closer together. So we can't compare the damage numbers. So in that case, if we can't exactly compare the damage, they do deal damage in two different ways, let's compare the utility then, and this might help understand why these two Covenant abilities are closer than you think. So, in the case of Death's Due, the utility aspect here is that the enemies within the Death's Due area, which is essentially Death and Decay, deal 1% reduced damage to you up to a maximum of 15%, and it is transferred to you. So you do gain extra strength while you have mobs in that area. But here's where this becomes useful and not useful. It is going to be useful for, say, leveling purposes. Yeah, it sounds really cool. It's going to be useful for, say, Mythic Plus environments. Where this is not going to be useful is, say, a boss fight. There's no way Blizzard are going to allow you to put this Death's Due down at the bottom of the feet of a boss and reduce the maximum power, I guess you could say, or damage that they do 15%. On a boss fight. You could essentially just put Death's Due down when the boss is due to do his massive cleave, and it just is 15% less. That's not how it's going to work. So essentially, the utility aspect of the Night Fae ability for Death Knights is essentially it's reducing the damage they deal and increasing your damage. So it's transferring the damage essentially. So that's utility. So let's look at the utility of the Necrolords. The Necrolord's utility is essentially that if a mob is further than 8 yards away from you, the Abominational Limb will grasp them and death grip them to you, basically on autopilot for 12 seconds. Now, I don't know about you, but how many times have we gone into Mythic Plus dungeons and there is a free casting mob standing in Sanguine and you simply can't move it. Now, as most classes do have a knockback or a death grip, as a Death Knight does, which is useful. Not in some cases, you don't have that luxury, and your tank has to LOS or run away and then kite them out, and that's time consuming. That is reducing the time you do have to do that Mythic Plus dungeon. It is extremely useful in dungeons where you have a Death Knight or 2 Death Knights to death grip these mobs closer to you or around a corner or out of line of sight, or, you know, is very useful to have. And as a blood tank, where you have Death Grip, Gorfiend's Grasp, and now an Abominational Limb that can essentially Death Grip anything further than 8 yards away, this is extremely handy in Mythic Plus dungeons, and can be extremely handy in raids for when you have adds that come into the field and your tank needs a specific add in a specific location. You have that ability if you were, say, taking Abominational Limb. So you can see here that these two utility-based aspects of these two abilities have positives and negatives. Let's have a quick look at these utility then. So in the Night Fae, it's extremely good for leveling, world quests, mythic pluses, and moderately okay for raiding as the utility goes. And the utility of the Necrolord one is great for world quests, leveling, mythic plus dungeon, and moderately okay for raiding. So you see what I'm saying here, guys, is the two abilities, if we were just to compare these two covenants, are very close. They have their own purposes in both in raiding, both in mythic pluses, both in leveling, both in, you know, world quests. They generally have their place. And also in PvP, providing these are used in PvP. Haven't really read that yet, guys. So long story short is where people are saying that if I am a Death Knight, as an example, in this example, oh no, I'm locked into, say, Night Fae because they deal the most damage or they have the best utility. I'd like to argue against that, where both of these abilities do deal a significant amount of damage by the looks of it. They also have great utility by the looks of it as well. Which one is better? Well, neither, really. Neither, both of them. In all honesty, they both have their place. It really comes down to your playstyle. It comes down to how you want to play your class. And I would almost go out here on a limb to say that basically it really wouldn't matter once Blizzard has the balancing under control, which Blizzard do have balancing issues, I get it. But once they have this under control, I wouldn't be surprised if both come out very similar in a raid fight or on a Mythic Plus dungeon. They would come out close. They're not going to be exact, they're not going to be perfect, but hey, that's it. Guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that has brought a little bit of light and my understanding of how these Covenant abilities work. In the long run, it really does boil down to how you want to play this game. It really boils down to how you want to play your class in Shadowlands. Is there going to be a one-pick wonder for maximum damage when Shadowlands launches? Yes. Will there be one in the first month? Yes. Blizzard are not going to get it right on the first month or first couple of weeks when Shadowlands launches. They're not going to. But when the first raid comes about, they should have had everything under control by then, and all these Covenant abilities should do moderately within the same small percentage, about the same damage over a course. It really boils down to how you want to play. Guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for coming and watching this video. I very much appreciate it. If you do like these videos and you want to see more content, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment, come and join my Discord, talk to me or leave a comment there, and it shows me that you guys are liking this content. If you have a different perspective on the Covenant abilities, or you've seen or played a different, and you feel differently to how I've explained it, please leave a comment down below. Let me know how you feel. I love information. I love understanding how people feel about these abilities and how we move into Shadowlands. But guys, that's been enough. That's been a long video, so thank you so very much. Go have a good evening, and I will see you right back here on the next video. See ya, everyone.